Yeah, exactly. But thank you for making it all the way through the summit today. I think we have a great session today. I'm just going to introduce our two speakers. First, we have Dave Fletcher, who's the CIO for the state of Utah, a very innovative state. I'll let Dave talk about some of the many innovative things that the state of Utah is doing, not only with AWS, but with their whole IT infrastructure. Dave and I had a chance to talk before the session, and probably one of the most forward-leaning states, I think, in the country and what they're doing with connected vehicles and IoT out there. So I'll let Dave talk to the rest of that. And then after Dave speaks, we're going to have Sara Watts, who's the general manager for Utah Interactive. And I know the state of Utah and NIC are very close partners. If you're not familiar with NIC, they're one of our really close partners. I'm really glad we had a chance to get them up on stage today. They provide a whole range of services to their state governments around the United States. They also have quite a large federal practice as well that's growing rapidly. They do things, they're really the innovators around public and private partnerships, right? So when you really think about states and being challenged with budgets, they really come up with some really creative solutions to allow the states that we all live in and work in and start businesses in grow and thrive by doing things like building mobile applications for states and handling all the park permitting and boat licenses, those kind of things, right? So I'll let Sara talk about that. But with no further ado, I'll let Dave come up, and we appreciate your time and attendance today.
All right, thanks, Alec.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're hoping the slides progress as
Looks
expected.
like it works.
All right.
All right, so we've got a small, intimate group here, but powerful group. So we just wanted to get an idea as we get started on sort of the demographics, because it was sort of hard at this conference. It seemed like there's a lot of federal people. Are any federal people here? Raise your hands. Only one or two federal? Okay, state government? A few state government people. How many provide services for federal? Okay, how many provide services for state and local? Any education people out there? All right. Okay, so we've got a pretty much a cross-section of everything. Really, I'm just going to introduce our first segment, and Sarah's going to take that over, but we're going to talk about a few things that we've been working on with AWS and in the cloud. And to begin with, we'll talk about a solution that we're developing using long-term data storage, some pretty large applications that we've moved to the cloud. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that we've done with Alexa, some of the services that we've built, and a little bit about how that went. And I think we're the first state to put an application, a skill on Alexa, and it's been really useful for us. In fact, we've had a good response from our citizens in terms of the kinds of services that we're putting there. And then finally, some things that we've done with analytics and sentiment analysis with AWS. So we'll start there, and then after Sarah's done, we'll talk a little bit about policy and strategy and some of those overarching issues and how the cloud has benefited us and how we expect to move forward in the future. So Sara, why don't you go ahead and talk about what we're doing and have done so far.
Great, thank you, Dave. Dave wouldn't tell you, but I've worked with Dave now for 19 years, well, 16, but Dave's been doing specifically digital government in the state of Utah for a long time, and he is a great innovator himself. He really helps lead the state in innovation. I'm lucky that I've been able to work with him for so long because it gives us the opportunity to build a lot of these great solutions. And the first one really being law enforcement video storage. And NIC, my parent company, works in 27 different states, like Alec said, and builds solutions for these states. But typically, we design, we develop, build, host, maintain on our own network these solutions. This one in particular posed a little bit of a problem for us, and that led us to AWS for the first time. So in 2015, you may recall that the Justice Department awarded $23 million in cameras, body cameras, to police officers. And that was great. They got $23 million worth of cameras and a little bit of training with those cameras. But it wasn't long before the Department of Public Safety in Utah, and I'm sure around the nation, realized that there was a problem. And they came to us saying, what do we do now with all this data? And we knew, based on what they were telling us, that it was not a solution that we would be able to, oh, well, that's good. Let's see. It was not a solution that we were going to be able to host in our current infrastructure. There were a lot of data storage challenges. And first, obviously, is the amount of data, but also the management of that data. And then the fact that there are privacy concerns with the data and security concerns. It's considered criminal justice information, so it needs to be covered by CJIS security compliance. I'm going to keep doing that. So the amount of data, just to give you a quick idea of what we believed we were facing at the time, there's 100, just the Department of Public Safety, Utah Highway Patrol, knew that they were getting about 156 terabytes of data annually that they needed to store for that year. So as we looked at the years, okay, that's 156 terabytes of data for 500 officers, but that was really just with their body-worn cameras. It turns out that they also had, they have 5 cameras, essentially. They have rear vehicle cameras, they have a cage camera in the car, they have an angle camera they call their DUI camera. You've all seen that footage, right?
Not all of us.
No. Some of you are in the footage, and some of you have seen it on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then to add to that, they knew they would have to retain some of that footage becomes evidentiary, and they have to retain it for longer periods of time, 10 years in our state, and that can vary across jurisdictions that time. So if we were just looking at body-worn cameras, we knew within 10 years we'd be storing about 437 terabytes of data just for Utah Highway Patrol. So, here's our 437 terabytes of data ramped up over 10 years. But if you looked at all of the officers in Utah, you were talking about, they have 4,800 officers, and that was 4,000 terabytes of data. And this was not taking into consideration the other camera footage that might be available, and the fact that cameras continue to get better, and then there's more data storage. So the amount of data was the first daunting issue for us. But it really didn't stop there, because what was happening is Utah Highway Patrol themselves had 2 cameras, and those 2 cameras had 2 different storage solutions. So the camera providers actually have storage solutions, and you may have heard of them, but they're different. So getting access to that meant you were accessing 2 different storage solutions for those 2 cameras. And there are lots of people that actually need to access this data. So there's the non-public data that goes through the court system. And courts need to access it, lawyers need to access it, and that could be anywhere in the state that they need to get that data. And then there's public data, and the media needs to access that. And it did not seem feasible to the state long-term to provide all these different solutions. In fact, they estimated that they were looking at about 23 different storage solutions. So they knew they wanted a centralized database of this police video footage. So where would all of that happen? And then how does it get managed? Data-wise, there's obviously the retention question, and that retention can vary. There's a chain of custody question, and that's what we learned that law enforcement calls it, chain of custody. Who has access to the data, who's modified the data, and then dissemination. The interesting thing to me about dissemination of the data is that the previous practice was to get this video footage, put it on a CD, and then the PIO would run it as quickly as they could in a vehicle, and Utah's a fairly big state, so sometimes they'd have a 6-hour drive to get video footage to the media. And with courts, usually they could mail it, but there is certainly a dissemination problem. And then they were looking at uploading and tagging that footage when police officers arrived back at the station towards the end of their shift. That was taking approximately 2 hours at the end of their shift. So they would have a shift for 6 hours and come in to spend the rest of their time uploading and tagging videos. So a bit of an issue there. And then there's the whole question of redaction. Video does quite often need to be redacted. There are privacy concerns with the video, and where there could be minors in a home that they enter, or there are innocent people in video footage and they don't want them shown in video that becomes public, usually not evidentiary. So all of those issues, and then you compound the fact that we needed something that was appropriate for the criminal justice information that it was with security compliance. And all of those solutions all of those challenges led us towards AWS. We were able to look at the long-term data storage with Glacier for a lot of the evidentiary files, so that we weren't putting all of our 4,000 plus terabytes in S3 and paying for that, so we were able to cost optimize. And we have been able to use GovCloud. That's been interesting as well. The state was insistent upon it, and then they weren't, and then they were insistent upon it again, and now they're backing off from that. But the good thing for us is that the option is there. We did realize that we had to build differently. We had to architect a little bit differently to put it in GovCloud, and there have been plenty of sessions on that. But AWS, in their own literature will tell you that they're willing to actually have people get background checks if needed, and all kinds of stuff. That made really what that became for the state was it made them feel a lot more comfortable with this solution. So all of these challenges around law enforcement data storage led us to AWS for the first time. And as we entered into that world, I guess, we realized that there were a lot of innovative opportunities for us as well. So today, we still have challenges with this solution. It is being used by the Utah Highway Patrol, and we're slowly getting other local jurisdictions to start piloting, putting their data up there, but there is still an issue with the translation of the metadata from proprietary camera providers. And we have to translate that and figure out how to translate it. That becomes a problem. Bandwidth for upload of the video footage at each one of those local offices, some of them almost in the middle of nowhere, becomes a problem, but the state has worked really hard, and AWS has even gotten involved to see how to increase that bandwidth speed for law enforcement. And then they are currently doing manual redaction of the video. But the innovation I mentioned has we've seen so many opportunities there, right? With automated redaction could eventually be a possibility with Amazon recognition. And we're really excited about that prospect. You can see here I may be the innocent person in the picture, and I want my face redacted from that video so that my challenged friend can...
That's not me, by the way.
That one is Alec, yes. So he's the star of that video. And we've also been looking into possibilities of partnering with a non-proprietary camera provider. And hopefully, long-term, that can be a better solution for states instead of buying these proprietary cameras. Or camera providers will start to open up their metadata a little more easily. But those opportunities with AWS and during the 2015 year, and then the fact that Alexa as a smart speaker was becoming a lot more ubiquitous in homes, led us to start thinking about how we could use Alexa in government. And that became a fun, interesting challenge for us. We are very used to helping agencies with their mission of educating the public, right? They have public information campaigns, all of them. They need to do things, educate the public, and we've become very familiar with doing that over web channels, desktop, mobile, tablet. And Alexa offers that same opportunity, just a different medium. And so we were able to start with a driver safety practice exam, which has become near and dear to my heart. My son recently turned 15, and this driver safety practice exam, he's a lot more apt to do on Alexa than he would sit down and read a manual. So he can go into his room and on his dot practice the driver safety exam, and I'm hoping by the time he gets his license, he may know a little bit about not texting and driving. Notaries in the state can practice their notary exam. And you may have heard Maryland talk about their phishing application. We actually built that first. Dave wants to be sure everybody knows that. And we called it Phishing Hotspots. And that was, that's just a fun implementation. You can ask Alexa, what's biting at a certain river, stream, lake, and Alexa can tell you what bait to use and when it was last stocked and, what is biting in that area. Public meeting notices in your area, not as exciting, but to some people, to a very small demographic, having public meeting notice information about specific topics is important to them, and they can get it right there. And we're in the process of working on some ballot education initiatives with Alexa. In this process, it became very obvious, and it was, for other reasons, becoming obvious to us, but especially with Alexa, we realized that all these different channels quickly become overwhelming, right? If you've got Alexa and your mobile, maybe mobile app, maybe mobile responsive, in your desktop site, how do we continue to maintain all of those services in a way that doesn't take as much time and effort as building it 6 different times? And that really pushed us towards building everything all the data that we need to expose into REST APIs. Now we've got lots and lots of services, so this is going to be an ongoing effort for a while to get all of them up to speed that way, but as we build things now, it's definitely in this pattern. And that has also made us realize that the more of these REST APIs we have, the more publicly available we need to make them, that then other people can build from this same data and offer their own channels for this information that government has. It's really kind of brought that to us in a real life way. The final thing that we were able to, and we've done quite a few things utilizing AWS, but the final thing, we're getting really excited about artificial intelligence. And so we wanted to just make kind of a quick foray into this to understand it a little bit better, see how we could use it. So we used existing data, and we have a lot of online services. So all these services that we offer online, vehicle registration renewal, and a lot of the stuff that Alec talked about, we have feedback on. And so we took that feedback data, and we were actually able to look at it for, over the course of 6 years, and we looked at 25 different online services and ran it through AWS Comprehend. offline. I mean, it's not a real-time thing or anything. It was just something easy we wanted to do, to look at sentiment and key phrases. It was something that's native, available in Comprehend, and easy to look at. And we were able to easily, as you can see here, look at all of our services and track the positive sentiment over the years, and the negative sentiment. And it wasn't like we weren't looking at this information. We were. But when you're looking at the information one at a time, or maybe the way that we were accumulating it and getting statistics on it, this offered a little bit of a different perspective. And that was fun for us to be able to see this sentiment data, you know, how much of it was coming in that was positive, how much of it was coming in that was negative, maybe what happened in 2014 that caused that negative shift, and analyze that a little bit. But we could also track all those applications and compare them in this way. We also looked at key phrases that popped out, and we knew some of the key phrases were going to be, you know, login and the typical, the payment issues and stuff like that that we typically would see. But we realized that there are some other kind of hidden issues, maybe with CAPTCHA or something like that. And what that led us to understand is that if we can start doing this real time, that we may be able to pick up on some of those key phrases that change, that trend up and down over time. If we can catch those key phrases quickly enough, we can actually see if there's a problem with something across all of our applications. CAPTCHA is a good example of that. We try and get notifications set up for anything that could possibly go down or have an issue. If a database goes down, we know immediately and fail over whatever we need to do. But third-party things like CAPTCHA, or what if Google changes their API for that and we have no idea, and it all of a sudden starts causing a problem, it may take us a while to react to that. This will give us another avenue for getting that information more quickly, and we can set up alerts, real-time alerts, to go to product managers that can see those changes in key phrase trends. So we feel like there is a lot of opportunity just in the data that we already ran through Comprehend, if we just get it set up real time and start applying triggers to that information. There's a lot of value to us, but long term, of course, we're interested in more reasons to use AI to provide, to help us not just provide better services to citizens, but to actually create new avenues and channels for citizens to get the help that they need. So we're excited about the potential with AI, and I know Dave especially has been talking about it for a long time, so we're excited to kind of start making more moves in that direction. And that brings us to the state's digital government strategy that Dave's going to cover.
I may cover something different, I don't know, Sarah. So they told me I could come down here because I can see you better, so. Let's see, anyone here from Arizona? No? Yeah, we were talking to Arizona a couple of weeks ago, the people down there, and their governor just came out and said that they have 3 years to move everything to the cloud. They're going to get rid of all their data centers. Pretty cool. But hopefully they have the right plans there. I guess I'm really excited about where we're at today because we're really at another convergence. 10 years ago, I thought that this was really exciting because we had the convergence of mobile and and we were just getting into cloud, and we had social media, and all these things seem new and exciting. But I think today is really a time when we're surpassing that with the convergence, the nexus of forces that they refer to with AI and IoT and cloud, and it's really a time where we are enabled to do some things that are going to be so exciting. Digital government strategy meets the cloud. I've been working on digital government, it seems like forever, and it's sort of been my life for a while. I need to correct Alec, I'm actually the CTO and not the CIO. I need to make sure that I don't try to take that title from our CIO, right?
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So anyway, our whole focus in the past was really this focus on developing new services for the public because it had a huge benefit for the public. They save time, they save money. We've done lots of public surveys to measure that, and they love digital government. You know, people generally aren't that excited about working with government, paying taxes and all that kind of stuff. But in Utah, they love paying taxes because they can do it online and it's simple. They love renewing their vehicle license. And now, you know, most states have all those basic services now. So we've come a long way, and government is doing a lot better in those areas than they have in the past. And the websites look more interesting. They don't look like they did in the past where they're boring. So where are we going to go next? I think that's where we want to talk a little bit. We still save a tremendous amount through digital government, right? And any state or anyone that provides services from a government perspective needs to be doing all those online because when we did an extensive assessment a few years ago in conjunction with the Center for Public Policy and Administration at the University of Utah, we identified an average savings for digital government of about $13 per transaction. So in Utah now we don't do as many as like California because we don't have 37 million people, but we do about 37 million transactions online, so you can do the math and see that the ROI on digital government that we've been trying to put together for the last 20 years has been tremendous. So we're going to have a greater impact, I think, obviously over the next 20 years, maybe over the next 5, as we begin to do deeper integration of these kinds of fantastic technologies into government, whatever level of government you're working at. It's just going to be tremendous. We need deep integration of artificial intelligence to manage the way we deliver government services. We need IoT to be able to connect things, so many different things. We're working, Alec mentioned our fleet. We're in the process of connecting all of our fleet vehicles, and we talked about our buses are all connected so that when a bus is behind schedule, the traffic signals automatically adjust to be able to get those buses back on schedule. And all of those things produce an ROI, just like we had with digital government, where we're seeing, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of savings. Really, the state of Utah has fewer employees today than it had in 2002, even though our population has gone up by probably 70 or 80%. We're the fastest growing state in the country, I believe, right now, or among the fastest. And anyway, how do we maintain that trend of improved services and innovation? If we put all of our services online, where do we go next in terms of digital government? And we're obviously hoping that AWS and cloud services are going to be a big part of that, even though we consolidated all of our data centers back in 2009. And that saved us a few $1 million a year. We had 38 data centers. We consolidated them into 2 data centers, a primary and a backup. So I think one of the things that did, even though we had a cloud strategy, a hybrid cloud strategy that we put together in 2009, because we had consolidated our data centers, we virtualized all of our server farm, and so we had a lot of savings. I think that probably slowed us down from where we would have moved to infrastructure as a service. So we began to use a lot of SaaS and different kinds of platform as a service applications. But today we're looking at trying to develop the Utah Digital Government Platform. Some of you who are Gartner clients may have seen something similar to this because they talk a lot about moving to a digital government platform for business, or digital government, or a digital business platform for business. And so we're looking at developing our digital government platform. And as you see, it has 5 components here. Down on the lower right is really focused on our internal systems, right? The government systems that make government work, like the ERPs, the CRM systems, and we have a variety of other systems in Utah, but they're the core systems that make government run. Up on the upper left is what we've been working on primarily for the last 10 or 20 years, which are the customer-facing applications that we're developing for citizens primarily, the citizen portal, public-facing ID and authentication, digital assistant services, and things like that. Our presence with social media. And then you have some others that you don't think about so much. On the upper right are the ecosystems platforms where you're trying to connect to all the different ecosystems that government interacts with. So one that we're particularly working on right now is our healthcare ecosystem, trying to connect to all the hospitals, all of the doctors' offices, the clinics, making the key connections through APIs to all of those different services so that the government services that we provide to them can be done seamlessly. For example, neonatal screening for newborns. We want to make sure that we don't lose newborns in the process. Today, that process has been paper-bound, so when they send blood tests and those kind of things to our state laboratory, that they get the results back quickly so that if there's a problem, it can be quickly remedied and taken care of. And so we're making those connections by developing a common ID platform between the state and all the members of that ecosystem, which is obviously quite a large ecosystem. And we have many other ecosystems. It may be law enforcement with all the local law enforcement partners that we have, private agencies, et cetera. So each of these ecosystems is large and requires probably an entire AP management piece that starts to connect all of those partners with state government. Down here on the left is our IoT platform, which includes sensor networks. It includes all of the things that we want to connect to, vehicles, traffic signals, et cetera, et cetera. And then really what makes it all work is intelligence, right, and data. So that's the key, is the data and analytics platform, which needs to become increasingly intelligent. And again, that is a place where we probably need some help. Deep integration of AI into government is not something that we're proficient at, I would say, at this point in time. And yet this is where the biggest benefit is going to come for government, is by tying all of these things together for better management, for better process flows, for all of the things that need to happen seamlessly. So this has sort of been the timeline for us. We developed a hybrid cloud strategy back in 2009. We updated it again in 2011, and today our real emphasis is getting to IaaS, infrastructure as a service. We're a little weak in that area, but we're making a lot of progress, and really I think that's due to we've established some standards across the state. Utah is a consolidated IT state. A lot of states in the past have been widely decentralized, so each government, I won't go into which states, but some governments have dozens and dozens of individual CIOs over their individual departments, and how much they work together can vary tremendously. So there's almost as many different models as there are states in terms of where we're at, in terms of centralization and decentralization, and there may be advantages to both. We've found a lot of benefit through centralization, where we've saved probably a few $100 million in the process of consolidating our IoT and being able to develop common infrastructure and systems and work together a little better. Obviously, it still presents some challenges in terms of ensuring that we're meeting all of the business needs and that we have the kinds of relationships with all of the individual agencies that we need to make them successful in achieving their goals. Phase 3, we have a lot of things we're trying to do. We want to align the potential cloud investments that we're making with state priorities, ensuring that we meet what it is that the governor wants to accomplish, that the legislature wants to accomplish. Obviously, in a political environment, you have many different masters when you're an IT organization, our individual agencies, as well as meeting the needs of citizens. So we have a lot of masters, and we want to make sure that we're aligning our cloud investments with those priorities. Then we want to make sure that we also have the capabilities to deliver the services in the cloud. Yesterday, I think the keynote talked about some tremendous things in terms of educating the workforce, and that's a big need that we have. We've worked with the AWS training, with Pluralsight and other vendors to be able to develop training that's really focused on being able to deliver the capabilities that we want delivered in the cloud. And so to do that, we've sort of standardized on a subset of AWS services in terms of our IT organization, because we know that going out the gate, we are not going to be proficient in 140 plus services that Amazon has delivered, or that AWS is delivering to us. And so we're trying to get proficient in as many as we can, but we're starting with a subset so that we know when agencies come to us, and we can clearly communicate, these are the services that we know how to deliver to you. And we'll expand those in the future, and we're letting them know that. In fact, so we have actually a larger set of standards, and some we can deliver on today, and we know that we're going to be able to do that effectively. Others will be tomorrow and in the future, and we're setting dates for when we'll be able to deliver and provide those specific services. Probably a little slower than I would like, but we want to, in the process of doing that, reduce the risks of new system implementation failures and be able to identify those services that are most tactical for us in terms of the AWS offering. So we focused on a few, like the IoT platform, recognition. There's a number of services that we've identified as being strategic for us, and we've set those as standards through our architecture review board. So these are a few of the recommendations that we're at with right now. I don't know if you're all familiar with, one of the biggest challenges for government is contracting and going through the process of being able to acquire services because of the restrictions that we have. So Utah was the lead state on the NASPO contract, NASPO Value Point, which is a tremendous resource because it because we can just procure things rather than having to go through multiple RFPs or contracting processes. Now that that's in place, I think there's about 118 purchasing addenda from different states across the country. All 50 states have participated in this. And so we're leveraging that contract. We're developing a comprehensive catalog of all the cloud services as we add them to our portfolio, so agencies can know how to get those services, what they mean for them in terms of capabilities, and then we're still working on improving the state's private cloud, and really working on we've worked through quite a few different proof of concepts in terms of private cloud infrastructure as a service capabilities, and then we're developing greater proficiency in supporting cloud products and services. Next, we're working on developing models to make connections between cloud and on-prem services. So we need to be able to connect data from our on-prem platform with data in the cloud and be able to deliver services based on data wherever it exists. And then obviously we have a major focus on ensuring that those platforms are secure. So implementing a cloud security gateway and an access broker solution. Improving the provisioning process. Also a big one, I think, for states that are like ours, where we're based on cost recovery. We don't get appropriated any funds, so we need to address deficiencies in our cost recover model. We've talked to a lot of states, and various states have different cost recovery models. We want to keep that as simple as possible. So if you look at, for example, what Minnesota is doing, it's just a cost plus 19% to cover their management and security pieces that they're adding to their AWS services. And then when we want to make progress in our use of containerization. We expect a lot of benefits as we continue our migration to cloud. Faster time to business impact, lower barriers to experimentation. I think obviously elasticity is a big motivator for us. We can roll up instances for testing and development, and then enabling new digital government services and ecosystems. I think we've a while ago come to the realization, like probably many of you, that we cannot maintain on-prem what you get from an AWS, obviously, because they're rolling out new services all the time, and we just want to build on top of that. Reduction in technical debt, and greater access to the innovation drivers that are available in the cloud. Obviously, there's still some challenges, and still challenged by governance and security issues when you're dealing with lots of agencies and systems, figuring out the expense, et cetera. What we've adopted as our standards, as the core, EC2, RDS, Glacier, Redshift, data pipeline, and cloud formation. Our security suite that we're working with currently is Macy, Inspector, KMS, GuardDuty, CloudWatch, and CloudTrail. For innovation and elasticity, Amazon Lex, the IoT platform, and Lightsail. And Sara talked about, before I wrap up, how we're partnering to deliver innovations with Alexa. That's one of our fun things. Anyway, it's been fun, and I think it's going to get a lot more interesting over the next few years. So it's an exciting time to be involved with AWS, with cloud, with the kinds of services that are available to improve services to government. So it's a good time to be in digital government. So I guess we've got a little
We
time
have some time for questions if
Al.
anybody has anything. Oh, right there. Great.
I was just wondering if you participate in any industry forums related to IT specific to state government.
Industry forums,
Yeah.
like NASIO.
You name it.
Yeah, we participate in quite a few different settings. The National Association of State CIOs is probably the one we participate in the most, and that meets twice a year. And then we've got a variety of others, but there's only so much time, so we sort of have to limit it to some degree. But there's a lot of discussion across all the states on cloud right now. When we first started talking about it in 2000, I remember I gave a presentation at NASIO in 2009, and there were only 2 states who were even thinking about cloud, and some who didn't even know what it was. So we've come a long way in the last 10 years.
That's great. Another question right there. I'm sorry.
Could you expand a little bit on why you looked at going to GovCloud, then decided not to go to GovCloud, and now might be looking at GovCloud? And like, what were the decision factors? I'm just curious to know a little bit more about that. If you can kind of discuss that a little bit.
Discuss GovCloud.
Yeah, why go in? Why not? What
DPS.
are the factors that
Yeah.
you are looking at to make that decision?
Sarah's going to talk about it related to DTS or public safety,
Public
and I'll
safety.
talk about it a little
It
broader.
had more really to do with the business leaders and business decision makers at Department of Public Safety and their apprehension, and then their maybe not so much apprehension over the security and the governance of the data that was going to be there. And so at first they were really apprehensive with an AWS solution. They were apprehensive with a cloud solution, I should say. And over the course of 3 or 4 months, they became a lot more comfortable with that. And once they were comfortable with it and realized that security was going to be just as good, if not better, than what was already being provided, they felt comfortable enough to say, we don't need to pay the extra cost of GovCloud. And then other people came in, and concerns ramped up again, and so the decision was made, okay, let's move this to GovCloud. And so we did, and now, as they're paying costs, the question is, do we really need the value of it being in GovCloud? So I don't know that there's anything really to learn from that other than it would be ideal if when you build a solution, you know whether you're going to be in GovCloud or not, because changes have to be made to move to GovCloud.
So we're doing more education now, obviously, since that was a few years ago, and things have changed a lot. There's more services available on GovCloud. We heard today that than there were last year. That's been always one of my concerns with GovCloud, is that we don't get all the services right away like you do on normal AWS platform. And so for me, I want to have as much available in the platform as I can. I also want to get the cost benefits from that we have in the regular cloud, but some agencies haven't been as comfortable as we have in terms of the assurances that we have, and that's for various reasons. We'll sort of see where we go. I think it's still evolving, I think, in terms of how fast GovCloud can keep up with the other cloud services, and whether we really need that in most cases. Do we need that assurance that comes from GovCloud? And there are lots of applications where we really don't, and so we can take advantage of the greater service capability and of the cheaper price, which are obviously both motivators.
Do you think that that's more, in essence, a perception issue? Like 80% perception issue, or do you think there really are factors where, okay, you really need to put this in GovCloud? Given what you know now.
I think
Just
it's
for the
about
compliance.
90-10. I think 90 of it is perception, where they've heard that GovCloud is much more secure. I think we can make the the public cloud just as secure as GovCloud in most of those cases. And so if it isn't absolutely required by the particular regulations that are associated with the application, I think we're going to be comfortable with the normal AWS services.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the only thing
there-
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to, there are certain instances where you absolutely
Right.
have to use GovCloud for compliance. And in those cases, it's great that it's available.
Right, and it's really the interpretation of CGI data, right? And that's really kind of a very clear delineating factor whether it needs to go in GovCloud or not. And like Dave's spoken about, we have a lot of customers who are very sensitive to the cost of going into GovCloud, right? But sometimes there's just the type of data that you're storing there necessitates to move one way or the other.
I was just curious to know what the role of the state legislature was for this. Were they committed to this? Did they help you? What's the role of the state policymaker here in accelerating this vision?
Actually, the state legislature in this case was concerned about the centralization of the data. That was their big concern. So they did pass legislation saying that the solution needed to have some kind of centralized component for access. But the state realized that long before the legislature passed the legislation and was working towards that solution anyway. The other role that the legislature will play is in redaction rules, the length of time. And, it could change every single year, those redaction rules could. And so we just have had to build a solution that can be flexible for whatever they decide.
So question on metadata management. You had the use case of the volume of data on camera data. What was your strategy managing that metadata? You said there were challenges. What were your lessons learned?
We're still trying to figure out the strategy there, to be completely honest. But the original strategy was we would put the video up and people would use their own, a different player. We'd have links to the players and they could play the video from the different players from the different providers. And we thought that parsing the metadata on that file would be easy. It turns out that some of it is easy and then some of it is really hard. And we really need to provide that metadata so that the police officer isn't tagging all kinds of information about the files. It's better if it's native because there are obvious problems that could occur just from mistakes in entry, but it also it alleviates a concern that some of it was fabricated and those sorts of things.
Chain of custody issues.
Chain of
There you
custody
go.
issue.
Yeah.
So anyway, that metadata it's kind of a slog. We work through it with the camera provider. We try and get the Department of Public Safety to put a little bit of pressure on them, but it's the state of Utah. We're small, and so sometimes they will give us the information so that we can parse that metadata, and sometimes they won't. We have to kind of reverse engineer whatever we can. Did that answer the question? Hopefully, okay.
I think we have one last question right there, and I think we then need to go to the closing reception so we can see Hardik dance.
This
and
will be
sing.
really
Yes.
fast, I hope. Thanks. I'm curious on the AI side, particularly for your citizen-facing apps, right? Have you looked at any AI supplementation so that there's intelligence there around just Q&A? Where do I find, not just like an Alexa app where you're looking at available info, but for example, Georgia Tech has a Master's in Computer Science program where about 50% of the TAs, the teaching assistants, are virtual. They're bots. And the students can't tell. The students have very great difficulty telling whether it's a real person they're interacting with or whether it's a bot. And I'm just wondering whether you've looked at, as part of the next generation here, moving to more AI
Yeah, we've
assistance.
actually had lots of discussions on that, I think in ASIO and other settings as well as in the state in terms of where we're going with that. We haven't settled on particular solutions right now, but
We have taken over 30,000 chat interactions from our from the online customer service team. We've taken 30,000 of those chats, and we've been running them through a different AI platform to see if we can, to see what kind of information we can glean there to get in that direction. So yeah, we're trying, we recognize there's huge advantages to being able to do that for lots of different reasons. And
yeah, obviously a lot of people are already doing that, so we're probably behind in the private sector and at least some people in that area. But I think that's an inevitable application that we're going to be using at some point in time.
yeah, our hope is that we don't make that like a decision tree, kind of like an IVR implementation of, and we've seen that. What we want to do is have it be a lot more artificial intelligence based, and so we're really just trying to look for a good solution. Good question.
All right, I think we just got the hook officially. Thank you.